Greetings, this is Father Sam Morehead, Rector of the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception, and I want to welcome you to this online voter's guide as we prepare for this election on Tuesday, November 5th, which sees us voting for issues and persons both at the national and the local level. We want to make sure that we do it first and foremost as good, holy Catholics, as persons informed by our faith and living and acting out of our faith. So let's meditate upon these things. Why vote in the first place? Well, Jesus gives a responsibility to us in the midst of this world to participate in political affairs. First, by prayer. He says we have to pray for our authorities. We have to pray for governors, emperors. We have to pray for presidents even in our modern context. When asked whether we had to pay the tax, he said, render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar. Yes, you have to participate in the society you're in. But then he went on to add, but render unto God what belongs to God and what doesn't belong to God. So it's our job as conscientious Christians to learn how God wishes us to cooperate with Him to order this whole world, from the level of the state down to the level of the individual. That doesn't have to be a heavy-handed affair, but it does mean we have to seek God's will in all things. And then, as we're given a responsibility to participate in that ordering, we take up our own mantle, and we participate as we can in our own context, perhaps by a vote, by our own work in a local community, by our advancing for the causes that God would have us advance in the time and the place where we find ourselves. So, the question is, how do we vote? We want to avoid a secular morality which would just weigh goods against each other and have us as individuals deciding on our own what we think is good or evil. No, we need to do this as Catholics, as Christians, which means we put our faith in the revelation of God. We are persons of faith. And so we form our conscience, that inner part of ourself that is informed by the truth of revelation, objective truth that comes into us, and then makes a practical application, and then a choice of the will to choose according to that. We will vote according to that. We'll spend money according to that. We'll love according to that. We will order all things accordingly. What is the conscience? Well, it is this inner faculty of the person, this most secret interior part of ourself, where the intellect and the will meet up. That which has been revealed to us as truth, that which has come into our intellect, we know is truth, then we have to choose with in our active go of life. It comes out in our thoughts, our words, our deeds, and even in our voting. It's not based on an authority within ourselves. We're not innate with an authority that chooses right and wrong, that knows right and wrong. We have to learn it. It comes to us ultimately from God, who is the ultimate authority after all. It's taught through the authority He gives to the Church. The Church is the only true moral teacher. It doesn't mean all bishops, priests, popes, etc. have been perfect. No, that's not what we're talking about. That the truths of God are passed through the Church as the authentic teacher of that which is true, beautiful, good, right morality, and for the right ordering of society. The Church teaches, we receive with freedom and live out of this. And so that has to inform how we participate in the life of society. There's a call to love, because ultimately everything is about God. And God is love. And He calls us to love like Himself. But we have to make sure we put the love in the right order. If we decide on our own what love is, we could go very much far afield, and we could end up supporting things that are actually quite wicked and wrong. So there's a hierarchy of charity, and charity is the perfection of God's sort of love. First, we're told as a commandment to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul. God gets number one place in our lives. After that, we have to love our own souls, choosing our own good, our eternal salvation. We would never shipwreck our own soul and choose something against God's will. So after the love of God, we love ourselves through the love of our soul. We love another's soul. So that means we wouldn't let another go into a place that isn't true. Then we love the bodily goods of others, and then we love our own bodily goods, which is a positive reality. It's not that we hate ourselves, but we just put that love as the lowest on the list, which forms a place of even self-sacrifice for the greater goods. I could deny myself some bodily delight for a greater good of my soul, for the greater good of my neighbor's soul. So this is how you order not only an individual life, but all of society. And it's based off of love, the love that is of God. We put that love into concrete action into our lives. The Church has taught us that there's a hierarchy of values in love. Again, not all things are equal or are to be pursued or promoted in the same order. So here is an ordering of the hierarchy of values by which we're loving, and even in a political context. At the top of the list, we have the sanctity of life. That which comes into being by God's will, we have to respect, from the womb to the tomb. So we'll first and foremost defend human life. Catholics must be the great defenders, promoters of the dignity of human life. After that, because human life comes into the familial context, the goods of family and of marriage must be promoted. Because we're meant to be persons who are spiritual, who come alive in relationship with God, we'll protect religious liberty and the right to adore and to worship God as best as we know how. Then, because we need a right ordering of the social goods around us, we will promote an economic justice, and we will care for those who are in need. This is what you will call writ large welfare. It doesn't mean that we have to have some particular policy of caring for other persons, but it means that there is a responsibility to see for the good ordering of society and to safeguard those who would be the most vulnerable. As a part of that, there is a place for promoting the good of health care, that we want to see persons' bodily goods promoted. But you see, again, it's after the spiritual goods. It's important, but not as important as the higher realities. Education is a way that we come to know the truth of the world and the truth of God, so we care about how our education system should run, including the right of persons to be the primary educators of their children in the ways of faith and morals. It doesn't have to be a public school that's doing it. As Catholics, we don't believe that. As Catholics, we believe parents have the first responsibility, and it's up to them to discern, with God's help, what's the best method to educate their children. Be it homeschooling, Catholic schooling, private schooling, you name it, there it is. We want to make sure we have a restorative justice, not a punitive justice system, that when there are offenses, there's a way to correct for it and bring reparation back to society, even as a justice is secured in that. We want to make sure that the environment is sustainable for human life. We don't seek the good of the environment for the environment's sake alone, instead for the good of the human race and all that makes for the fullness of living in this world. And that we want to have a right ordering of technology, that it doesn't become misused to oppress any individual group, etc. So this is how you put love concretely in action based off that hierarchy of charity which came from St. Thomas Aquinas earlier. We've got particular ballot issues here in Colorado that we have to consider. The Colorado Catholic Conference, which is formed by the 4 bishops of Colorado, the Archbishop of Denver, the auxiliary here, and the bishops of Colorado Springs and Pueblo, respectively, they've told us that these are some very important issues that demand a clear Catholic vote. First, no on Amendment 79, which would try to enshrine in the Colorado Constitution a so-called right to abortion. If abortion is the direct, willful killing of a child in the womb, it cannot enjoy a right, and a good Catholic must absolutely oppose that evil being promoted as a good under cover of law. We're going to oppose the next amendment, which would define marriage in a redefined way that doesn't reflect God's ordering that's revealed both by natural law and by our own divine revelation directly to us. And so we want to make sure that we are respecting a godly ordering of marriage. And then finally, we want to make sure that persons have a right to school choice. Public schooling, which is run by the government, does not have to have a monopoly either on the attention of students or on taxpayers' dollars. The history of this is quite contentious. Colorado and other states were only admitted into the Union because a certain senator by the last name Blaine, with his Blaine amendments, insisted that there could be no money going to Catholic schools. It was bigoted from the beginning, it was anti-Catholic vitriol, and it's the only way that we and other states came into being. We will not continue promoting any form of discrimination, and especially one that would go against ourselves. And so that means there has to be an openness and a right for parents to be able to educate their children as they deem best. Public schools are a good reality, but they're not the only one. And so as faithful, devout Catholics with an ordering of love, we want to make sure that we're not restricting how parents are able to educate their own children. So as you prepare to vote, let's do this both as, first and foremost, good Catholics, persons with a mature, developed conscience who put themselves in the light of God and see everything else flowing from God. And then when we do that, we are also good citizens, because we're not acting as those who keep our faith hidden under a bushel basket. Instead, because of the love of God, who is sovereign of all, we put our faith out on a stand for all to see, and the influence goes wider. We're not ashamed of Jesus Christ, and we're not ashamed of the good that He and the faith in Him wants to bring to the world around us. So, as we head to the polls, we vote, but we vote as Catholics. God bless you.